Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and we're going to talk about the question: does Wizards of the Coast control, owned by Hasbro, does Wizards of the Coast control canon for Dungeons and Dragons? I'm not going to bury the lead. I'll give you the answer right now. I think the answer is no, they do not. Who controls canon for Dungeons and Dragons? It is my opinion, my IMHO, it is my humble opinion that the D&D community determines canon for Dungeons and Dragons. It's a complex question. It's complex. There's some complexity here. Let's talk about this. All right. So Jeremy Crawford just announced for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition what is and what is not canon. Okay. Jeremy Crawford clarified canon for 5th edition. He said anything in a Dungeons and Dragons, it's got Wizards of the Coast seal on it, right? Any hardback adventure like Storm King's Thunder is official canon. Any Dungeons and Dragons source book like the Monster Manual or like Xanathar's Guide to Everything is canon. Here's what's not canon: Young Adventurer's Guide isn't canon. Dungeons and Dragons Dark Alliance, the new video game, is not canon. By the definition he just gave this week, right? But the Dungeons and Dragons, the Magic the Gathering Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in Forgotten Realms is not canon, right? And then also novels. There is young adult novels that are going to be published in the next coming month, not canon, right? So this is a hard answer from Jeremy Crawford. I really despise this answer. I love that they gave the answer, right? It takes courage to give answers today. So let's talk about why I think Dungeons and Dragons does not control canon. Okay. So first of all, if I'm saying they don't control canon, let me tell you what they do control. I think they control official content, right? They control what is and what is not official content for Dungeons and Dragons. I'll give you a perfect example of this, right? Explorer's Guide to Wild Mountain, 100% official content, right? Tal'Dorei book. Okay, so you got Matthew Mercer writes a book about Exandria, and Dungeons and Dragons is like official content, right? Like this is part of D&D. That book has the Critical Role icon on the side of the book, and it has the D&D icon on the side of the book, right? That's a big deal, right? Tal'Dorei, they're like, no, that ain't official content. You could take that nonsense, you could throw it in a lake, right? Like that ain't real. You slap some 5e number on the front, and yeah, maybe it even has our OGL in there, but it ain't official. Oh, by the way, in case anybody missed it, everything on DM's Guild, you can call that trash. That definitely is not official content, right? It's just like, hey, all you scrub DMs who want to use some non-official books, you can go over here, and this is adjacent to D&D, but it's not official content. So I think that Dungeons and Dragons very clearly controls official content, right? They do not control, in my opinion, canon, okay? And the reason why is they're too disingenuous and they can't be trusted on this issue, right? Here's a perfect example, right? They are saying, hey, if it's in a source book, it's canon. But if it's in some other product, it's not. A source book or an adventure, hardback source book, hardback adventure, it's official canon, right? But if it's in some other form, it's not. Look at the Magic the Gathering right now. So it's a Magic right now, right? If you go into any FLGS in the world, you will find, any decent one, you will find Magic the Gathering Adventures in Forgotten Realm. That is very official, right? Okay, so here's the issue. You are putting this out when 5th edition is out. You're giving us the real Forgotten Realms name, right? And then you have Drizzt Do'Urden there, right? Like, Drizzt Do'Urden has been around since the beginning of the game. And so you're saying this isn't Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition canon, right? That the Drizzt Do'Urden card, Magic card, is not Dungeons & Dragons official canon. Brunor Battlehammer is in there, right? Then there are new 5th edition adventurers who have made up names who are like brand new, right? Why on earth should Drizzt Do'Urden or Brunor Battlehammer not be part of official canon? There are cards in there called you come across the river, you come across a glade, right? Prosperous prosperous inn owner, right? Prosperous tavern owner is a card. Why on earth would that not be Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition canon? It seems ludicrous, right? The other issue is bringing in young players, right? They're bringing in new novels, and they're going to take the time to give them real D&D races, real D&D classes, names that are consistent with the names that you will find in Xanathar's guide. And they're like, nope, this is just scrub content. Whatever your young person read, they don't really know D&D. This isn't canon, right? It's disingenuous. It's a lack of courage. It's a lack of willing to do the hard work and actually deal with the ramifications of making that content canon. It is very frustrating to me. So all right. So I've told you I don't think that Dungeons & Dragons, that Wizards of the Coast controls D&D canon. So who does? D&D Community. Why do I say this? One of the biggest right out of the gate, right, is if the D&D Community asks for something, they can make it canon. By far, the biggest proof of this is Session 0. Session 0 showed up in official Dungeons & Dragons canon in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, right? I'll tell you right now, I think just like any smart dungeon master, Wizards of the Coast detests Session 0. They know it for what it is. Session 0 is a committee to hold a role-playing game. You warn people that the game is dangerous. You have a very high real risk of making the entire session nothing but a bunch of triggering traumas and asking people to talk about things that they may have PTSD about. Session 0 is the worst possible idea. It makes the game longer. It makes the game boring. It warns people that the game is dangerous when it isn't, right? It is a layer cake of crap, right? Like, Session 0 is the worst junk to ever hit TTRPGs at the macro level, in my opinion, right? I agree with Jennifer Kretschmer, who said that Session 0's for probably close to a decade were nothing more than sessions that were traumatizing people, right? That's like, it's crazy. Session 0 is pure crap, right? All right, and now it's official canon. Why? Because D&D Community said it should be, right? And Wizards of the Coast is bound by the D&D Community, right? If they have a macro level of people who are talking about something over an extended period of time, and they keep getting called out on it and called out on it and called out on it, they will change canon. Period. D&D Community is the real controller of canon. Here's another reason why it has to be the D&D Community that controls canon and determines canon, right? We control the game in that we run the game, right? And so we can put into our games what we choose and what we don't. Generally, we want there to be some official connection to the game. I think most dungeon masters don't care if there's an official connection. They care that there's an official connection to Dungeons & Dragons. They absolutely do not care if there's an official connection to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, right? And I will also say, I think anything connected to Gary Gygax is canon, right? Perfect example is the 1983 cartoon. And that's another thing. So right now, right? Dungeons & Dragons is saying, Wizards of the Coast design team is saying Dungeons & Dragons 1983 cartoon is not canon, right? Because it's not in any of the source books. But as soon as the Wild Beyond the Witchlight shows up, Warduke is in that book that officially makes 1983's cartoon content canon in the game, right? But I say right now, every dungeon master out there worth their salt knows that the 1983 cartoon is canon in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition right now, right? Like, that's ludicrous to say it's not. So the reality is, I don't think Wizards of the Coast actually controls canon. They 100% control official content, and I think that those are two different things. And also, if you're out there, you're like, oh, it doesn't matter, Scott, we can put whatever we want in your game. That's not true. You are under pressure from your players, just like every other dungeon master. And a lot of players like to think they like to pretend this, but if people don't like what you're throwing down at your table, they're gone, right? They can go play they can go watch movies, they can go play video games, they can go to a new DM, right? So the reality is you don't have the freedom you think you do, right? Because if you don't put stuff up that players are comfortable with, you're going to lose your players, okay? And I know, like, the Dungeon Master seat is like this god seat, and everybody like pretend that we have unlimited power. We don't. And Wizards of the Coast doesn't have unlimited power. They don't actually control canon. The D&D community controls canon, okay? Wizards of the Coast, that's in my opinion. Without a doubt, Wizards of the Coast 100% controls Dungeons & Dragons official content, right? They have that D&D logo, and that thing don't go on much, right? When the D&D logo, right, D and D with the dragon in the middle, red, bold, iconic, right? That does not drop on even just the ampersand that looks like a dragon. That says this is official content, and they protect that like crazy. And while they are flexing that they control canon, they absolutely do not control canon, in my opinion. They control the official content. And also, I'm going to encourage you, as part of the D&D community, don't forget for 1 second that you control canon, right? And, in my opinion, and you should use that power and make sure that your voice is heard. And don't squawk a lot, right? Like, just say the things that you actually care about. Say the things that are important, right? And when you say that on a social media site, don't think for 1 second that isn't getting back to Wizards of the Coast. It absolutely is getting back to Wizards of the Coast. It may not get back to them individually, right? But it may. But it absolutely is getting back to them in the aggregate, and they are definitely listening. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.